It's 5:30, everyone, so welcome to City Council's Policy and Resources Scrutiny Committee meeting held today via Microsoft Teams on Tuesday, 22nd of February 2022. This meeting will be recorded and made available to view via the Council's website, except for discussions involving confidential or exempt items. Therefore, the images and audio of those individuals speaking will be publicly available to all via the recording on the Council's website at caerphilly.gov.uk. So let's turn to our agenda. And agenda item 1 is to receive apologies for absence. We've received apologies from Councillor Christine Forehead, Councillor Elaine Forehead and Councillor Roy Sorrellis. Are there any other apologies people are aware of, please?
No, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Can I ask you, Mark, please, to take a roll call of people attending?
Yep, certainly, Chair. Councillor Adams.
Present.
Councillor Aldworth.
Present, Chair.
Councillor Cuss.
Present.
Councillor Hardin.
Present.
Councillor Johnston.
Present.
Councillor Kirby.
Present.
Councillor Mann. Councillor
Mann is
Miles.
muted.
Oh, I can see Councillor Mann.
Sorry, Chair, I was muted. Present.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. Councillor Miles.
Present.
Councillor Morgan. Councillor Sargent.
Yes, I'm here.
Councillor Simmons. Councillor Taylor. And Councillor Whittle. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mark. Agenda item 2 is declarations of interest. Oh, sorry, Councillor Mann, please.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if you've got a view on it or not, but we do seem to be getting consistent apologies from certain members, and it's been raised before a year or two back, and things changed for a while, but we seem to have gone back to the former situation, unfortunately.
Thank you for your observation, Councillor Mann. I am aware of it, I am concerned about it, and I will raise it in the appropriate quarter. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Back to item 2 on our agenda, which is declarations of interest. Councillors and officers are reminded of their responsibility to declare any personal and or prejudicial interests in respect of any business on this agenda in accordance with the Local Government Act 2000, the Council's Constitution and the Code of Conduct for both councillors and officers. Are there any declarations of interest, please? Councillor Mann, you're still showing your hands up.
Sorry, I forgot to take it down.
Thank you. There are no declarations of interest. So on to item 3 on our agenda, which is to approve the minutes of the Policy and Resources Scrutiny Committee meeting held on the 20th of January 2022, pages 1 to 6 of our pack. So I'll go through each page in turn for accuracy. Page 1. Page 2. Page 3. Page 4. Page 5. And page 6. Can we please have a mover and a seconder from members who attended this meeting?
Councillor move, Chair.
Second, Chair.
Oh.
Liz Aldworth.
Okay, Councillor Adams moved, Councillor Liz Aldworth second.
Yeah.
So the vote is coming up on our screens now. If anyone hasn't got this form on their screens, please let me know and we can take our vote verbally.
Chair, I will abstain as I wasn't at the meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Sargent.
Yeah, that's been carried, Chair. 7 votes for, 2 abstentions and no votes against.
Thank you, Mark. On to item 4 on our agenda, which is consideration of any matter referred to this committee in accordance with the call-in procedure. Has any matter been called in, please?
No, Chair. No reports have been called in for this meeting.
Okay, thank you, Mark. No matters called in, so on to item 5 on our agenda, which is the Policy and Resources Scrutiny Committee Forward Work Programme. Over to Mark, please.
Thank you, Chair. Members are asked to consider the Forward Work Programme alongside the Cabinet Work Programme as appended to the report and to suggest any changes. Just a diary marker, the next meeting for this committee will be on the 5th of April, and we have one report so far, which is a new addition, a recent addition, and that's on the recruitment and retention challenges. So that's the reports so far penciled in for the 5th of April. So if members are happy, I would like to seek approval to publish the Policy and Resources Scrutiny Committee Forward Work Programme onto the Council's website. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mark. Is there a mover and a seconder for that proposal, please?
Yeah, move, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Seconder? Councillor Mann, thank you for that. It's been moved and seconded. Can we have a vote, please? Thank you. It's on your screens now. Again, if people aren't able to vote with forms, please let us know.
Yeah, that's been carried unanimously, Chair. 10 votes for, no against and no abstentions.
Thank you, Mark. Then we move on to item 6 on our agenda, which is to receive and consider the following Cabinet report, draft budget proposals for 2022-23. Has this report been brought forward, please, Mark?
No, it hasn't been brought forward, Chair.
Thank you, Mark. Therefore, we move on to the next item on our agenda, which is item 7, Directorate Performance Assessment 6-month update 2021-22. And to introduce the report, we have Cabinet Member Councillor Elena Stenner, please.
Thank you, Chair. Before you this evening is the 6-month Corporate Services Performance Assessment. This is the Directorate self-assessment and forms part of the Council's overall self-assessment activity. It covers the period from April to September 2021, providing information and analysis for this period. The recommendation is shown at 3.1 of the report, and I know that Sue Richards is in attendance this evening, and I believe she has further comment in relation to this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stenner. Welcome, Sue. Please do add your further comments, please.
Thank you, Chair. Ed Edmonds gives his apologies today. He's on leave. He's asked me to raise a few points on his behalf, Chair. The early part of the DPA in front of you tonight sets out 6 strategic objectives for this financial year, which include leading and supporting the organisation's Team Caerphilly Transformation Programme, continuing to refine the Council's governance arrangements to ensure they remain fit for purpose and compliant with legislation, developing and refreshing employee working practices that support the Team Caerphilly ethos and the emerging organisational culture, supporting the implementation of modern fit for purpose approaches to decision making and local democracy, developing an IT environment that's secure, drives transformation and enables efficient service delivery. And the final one, maximising the Council's financial position. You'll see alongside those objectives within the DPA, all of the progress noted that's been made so far. I think it's really important that we recognise that this progress has been made in spite of the pandemic response, which I think key for members tonight. It's been incredible to witness the efforts of our staff in charting a course through some incredibly choppy waters over the last 2 years. The DPA also includes a range of key performance information for members' consideration. You'll see we're still having some challenges meeting our FOI targets, and you'll know from the budget proposals that we're seeking 2 additional Freedom of Information officers to assist in that area. The document also includes a detailed section on resources. 2 things to share here. Firstly, the challenges presented by COVID in relation to sickness absence and associated self-isolation have been immense, and in my view need to be recognised. The Council's record of keeping the majority of its services running in spite of those challenges has been a real testament to the Team Caerphilly spirit. Secondly, we'll also note even as far back as September, we were looking at a projected underspend. Much of this has been a result of additional grant funding coming into the system, as well as challenges in recruitment and spending. Members will be encouraged to note that we've been working with colleagues in finance to reinvest this underspend in some much needed additional capacity across corporate services. Details of the proposed investment are included in the All Authority Revenue Budget Monitor report, which will be discussed later this evening. We're also bringing a report, which I think Mark referred to in his forward work programme in March, to look at the recruitment challenges and a range of options to try and address them. In essence, Chair, we have made good progress despite the challenges, and with a planned investment in additional capacity, we can press on with our delivery of our objectives. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sue. That was a very fine summary. Thank you. Open to members now, please. And I know some members have some points to make or questions. I can't see any hands up. Ah, sorry. Councillor Sargent, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Elyned, and thank you, Sue. My question is on staff absences and in relation to their well-being. It's good to note that staff that you're looking to retain and hopefully recruit more staff, but in particular the people services personnel, the team there, are they particularly understaffed, or is it their sickness absence due to COVID or something else? Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Sargent. Who'd like to take that, please? I thought so, yes. Lynn, please.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I was having some difficulties with my hand then. Councillor Sargent, you referenced sickness, absence within people services. I'm responsible for people services and we don't really have issues with sickness, absence. I mean, the team are really busy, but in people services itself, the team isn't busy. Perhaps, are you talking about the whole authority and sickness being under
no, I was
sort of
talking
umbrella
about
of people services?
But I've obviously read it wrong.
That's
but
okay.
Can you give me an oversight of the whole authority, please?
Yes, certainly. We have had some challenges around sickness absence in recent months. We have had an increase in sickness as a result of the Omicron variant. Staff were falling unwell after having their vaccinations. The other issue that has really impacted on staff is the delays in NHS waiting times that weren't there prior to the pandemic. So some of those staff that are absent previously, prior to the pandemic, would have perhaps had operations, had treatments, and had either been back in work or other decisions would have been made for them. So there are a whole host of reasons as a result of the pandemic why our absence levels are as they are. We're obviously in the winter months, our normal flus and colds are there as well. So the pandemic has brought additional challenges to us, no different to any other local authority, but we're working through them with managers. We're trying to support staff as we are, and as Sue has mentioned, there is an issue on recruitment and retention across many services within the council, not just our council, all local authorities. They're national challenges, and as Sue has mentioned, there's a report coming to the committee next month for members to see what those challenges are and what we're trying to do to address them.
Thank you, Liz.
Oh, thank you very much, Lynn. Can I ask another question now on well-being again? I know lots of staff are finding working from home very good, but I know there are some staff that are finding it very challenging due to their partners working from home or the fact that they're missing the contact with other people, more that sort of thing. How is that being addressed? Because I'd hate to think that people are starting work 7, having stops here, stops there, stops everywhere else, and still working 10 o'clock in the night. I mean, it's what we councillors do day in, day out, and we know how exhausting it is. So I would hate to think that staff are doing that as well. Can you give me some idea how that's working out?
Yes, certainly. Managers are having and should be having regular one-to-ones with their staff. Councillor Sargent should be monitoring the hours that they work in, talking to their members of staff about their well-being, their workloads. We have, since the beginning of the pandemic, had the opportunity for staff to attend council premises if working from home is causing them difficulties. Appreciate it's not the environment for everybody. There are some health issues and other very good reasons why people shouldn't be working from home. So with a risk assessment, staff are able to attend work premises. They might not have all of their colleagues as they would have prior to the pandemic around them, but we certainly are able to support staff to attend work premises if it's causing them some problems at home.
You're on mute, Margaret.
Oh, thank you very much, darling.
Thank you, Lynn. Thanks very much. Over to the next, and that's Councillor Miles, please.
Thanks, Chair. I've got two questions to ask. My first question was around the issue of the FOI and the data subject access requests, and the fact that we're not currently, or we weren't at the time of the report being written, weren't meeting those obligations, those targets, those dates that we're set in law. Obviously, I heard that Sue said there are 2 staff going to be recruited into those positions, but I'm still concerned about the deadlines, and I'm wondering how that is progressing in terms of recruiting those extra staff, but also what is being done in the meantime to meet those deadlines set in law.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. Perhaps Sue would like to come back on that. Yes, I see.
Yeah, what I'll do, Councillor Miles, if it's okay, I could give you an update, but it's not my service areas, it's Liz Lucas's. Unfortunately, Liz is on leave this week, and Karen's unavailable. She has got another engagement. So I'll ask Liz to give you an update on that query to all Scrutiny members soon she returns for leave, if that's okay with you.
Thank you, Sue. That's helpful. Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Is there anything else, Councillor Miles?
Yeah, my other question then was looking at the risks on page 32 of the report, and one of the risks there is CORP DIR09 funding, and it's to do with the 15 staff who are at risk, and the fact that there are problems recruiting into those roles. And the comment there that we're unable to run the service on short-term funding. So, you know, I well understand the issues that are being faced by the organisation there, but I don't get a feel for what can be done. What can we do to safeguard these jobs and to recruit into this position? But I don't know if somebody can elaborate on that a little bit.
Sue's got a hand up. Sue, please. Oh, Lynn, yes. No, Lynn, do please come in.
Or generally, really, Councillor Miles, from me, we do have an issue across the council where we have many staff in fixed term posts as a result of funding. It's a piece of work that I'm doing at the moment, along with Stephen Harris, the head of corporate finance, to look at options in terms for these staff for the future, to try and ensure that we've got staff in post within the council and to give them more security going forward. So it is a piece of work that we are looking at. I'm not sure that answers your question specifically about this team, but generally across the council we are looking at it.
No, but I'm pleased to hear that because something does need to be done, doesn't it, across the organisation. You're probably right. Rather than looking at one particular section where maybe there isn't an easy solution, but if you are recruiting staff into temporary posts, there must be a way of offering those people some degree of security, if not in a particular job, at least within a large organisation like Caerphilly Council. So some certainty then.
Yeah, it is difficult because of the challenges of the funding that is attached to the posts. Also, we would always look at other options for staff, especially where they have transferable skills. And our redeployment policy, we are committed to looking at options for staff if they have more than 2 years service with the council. But as I said, you know, with the challenges of recruitment and retention in particular going forward, and that we're experiencing now. We do understand that offering fixed term appointments to staff isn't always an appealing opportunity either. So we are looking to maximise all the opportunities we can as a council to encourage people to come and work for us and to have a career with us and to stay with us. So as I said, it is something that we're looking at.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lynn. I know Councillor Johnston is next on the list, but Councillor Mann wanted to come in on this point, I think.
Yes, please. Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I missed the page that's been referred to, but I think Brenda, you said IROs. Is that correct?
My first question was around freedom of information.
No, about this particular one. I think you mentioned IROs, yeah?
IROs.
Which are the independent reviewing officers, I believe. Is that right? Is that right, correct, Lynn?
I don't think I mentioned IROs specifically.
Oh, there we are. I obviously heard wrongly then.
So you don't have any more to say?
It's acronyms. I'm being thrown by the acronyms.
Okay, so if you didn't say IRO, what I was going to say is probably irrelevant.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Mann.
Okay.
Councillor Johnston, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I know Margaret touched on it a little bit, but I was going to bring it up. But while Lynn's here, we might as well have this debate again because, Chair, I believe over the last 2 years we've had quite a couple of debates around staffing and COVID and all out there. And I did hear Lynn's reply to do with the Omicron, but this report is for 6 months. Omicron was only from Christmas onwards. So to say that the staff absence is, so we have had this debate over the last 2 years to do with staffing and, whether working from home's right for them and all that there. Lynn, can we maybe have a bit better breakdown of why people are off on sick? Because the benefits of working from home, to me, should be seeing less people on the sick, not more people on the sick, because you haven't got the stress going into the office, commuting, all that there that can put on you. So if you do have a bit of a cold, you would sit and work through it as before. When you had a cold, you went out, went to work, but to see staffing levels, to see sickness levels going up at a time when you expect it to go down, and with us going to be offering, hybrid people having a choice whether they work from home if they can or go to the nearest place to work, is that any benefit to the authority at all? And this is where we need to be looking at. And is it what Margaret brought up about the well-being? Is well-being and people's state of mind, is that high on the list of sickness absence? Because if it is, then we have to really sit and think, is offering people working from home the right option for them? Because even though they may pig it, because it might suit them not going into the office, but is that the right thing? So, I know we've had this debate over the last couple of years, and Colin's here as well. It was to do with different staffing issues, but it was based around the well-being of the staff and out there. So I just wonder what your views are, and what can we do? Why is sickness, and just saying Omicron is not 6 months, so it's more to do than just Omicron. So can we dig more deeper into these figures and see where we can go look at?
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Lynn, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, absolutely appreciate what you're saying, Councillor Johnson. Omicron was present before Christmas and there were other variants before that, but I absolutely take on board your comments. I think it's important that we remember that not all of our staff work from home. A lot of our services are frontline and don't work from an office, therefore don't have the option to work from home. We've got care staff, we've got refuse, highways, parks, catering, cleaning, schools, lots of our staff that don't have the option to work from home. We've got a wellbeing strategy that's been through this committee. There's lots of actions that are on there, that some of which we've already completed, others that we will be taking forward to ensure that we're looking after the well-being of our staff. As I said, we've got the one-to-ones where managers should be picking up issues from their staff. As I mentioned earlier, staff can go into a workplace if working from home is causing them any difficulties. Within the report in front of you, you'll see reference to a deep dive around sickness that has been undertaken. That hasn't brought any real sort of patterns within teams or services of concern. But certainly, if it would help, I can have conversations with Councillor Gordon, who's the Cabinet Member for Corporate Services and the Chair, to look at information to come into this committee in the future, if that would help, Chair.
Yes, thank you, Lynn.
Yeah, Chair. Yeah, Chair. Just if I can just come back on that there. Thank you, Lynn. But you know, a lot of these staff or frontline services, the schools or bin men and all, they have been out during the whole pandemic. You know, so that's not going to change. You know, but to see the increase in sickness is of a concern. That why now, as we're coming out of the pandemic, we're seeing when during the pandemic it was less levels. You know, you see where I'm coming from. It's not just a fact that, you know, you can say, you know, and I totally agree with what you're saying, you know, with people working all the way, you know, at the minute, but they were working all the way through, come on, let's face it, or bin men and that there, it was absolutely brilliant, you know, the work that they done, or schools, you know. But why are we seeing these high levels of sickness now as we are getting back? Is it stress that people might be asked to go back to work? You know, this is where I'm, you know, looking at it. It might not be, they love working from home, as Councillor Kirby has said, you know, it's brightened his day, you know, made his day not having to get 2 buses each way to get to work, you know, and maybe people thinking, oh, I'm going to be asked to get into work, I'm going to go on the sick, you know, so it could go the other way, you know, but I just find it strange that, you know, we're seeing high levels now and not during the pandemic when it was as, no, it's worse.
No, you're quite right, Councillor Johnson. Is something that we need to keep monitoring, reviewing. We need to keep an eye on. We need to understand why. As I said, you know, we do have some staff whose treatments have been delayed with the NHS, where they would have been either back in work or otherwise before. But I think, you know, as I said, if you don't mind, I can work with the Chair and with Councillor Gordon to look at bringing a report into here. You know, for members to scrutinise themselves and to assure themselves that we're doing what we can, and for members to ensure that there aren't sort of patterns around services or teams, you know, for members to be as comfortable as possibly they can. I am aware from my colleagues in other authorities the sickness is an issue that is rising everywhere. It's not just Caerphilly, but I do appreciate from members that we need to be mindful of what's going on in Caerphilly, and we need to assure ourselves here.
As always, thank you, Lynn.
Yes, that's very helpful, Lynn. Do please work with Councillor Gordon, and if we can see a report along the lines you just sketched, that would be very welcome, please. Thank you. And thank you, Councillor Johnston. Over to Councillor Mann, please.
Thank you, Chair. I noticed Councillor Gordon's on the call. I believe he is, but anyway, yeah, what I'm reading here, Lynn, is that sickness absence across the whole authority remains above the Wales average. I assume that's the average for councils. So we haven't just got a problem; we've got a bigger problem for other people, and it's rather disappointing to hear that a deep dive has been done and not come up with any answers. I mean, in the report that's coming next time round, will we be given the main reasons why people are off? I mean, it's I'd be very surprised not to see stress amongst those particular categories. But you know, the fact remains that we're losing huge amounts of money as an organisation with people not being in work, and it states it on the report. There's no point in repeating what it says on there. But we were told initially that working from home was helping with sickness absence, and sickness absence had improved. And you know, recognising the fact, as Councillor Johnson did, that you know COVID is an issue. It can't be the whole answer. I mean, are we finding out why people are off or why they're stressed or whatever? Because there's certainly an issue there which I don't know, it's been ongoing for quite some time, and quite honestly, I may have it wrong, but I don't really see us making any progress. Maybe the opposite. I do have another question as well, Chair, if I do.
Okay, let Lynn respond to this first, please.
Yeah.
Lynn.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Mann. In terms of the reasons for absence, you'll have seen in the wellbeing strategy that came what the top 10 reasons were in previous years. I can certainly bring that back into P&R and I can bring it back across directorates. I'm not sure where we sit amongst the other authorities in relation to sickness absence for 2021 to 22. Won't know that until sometime after the end of March, when we've all had time to run our figures and then compare them via the WLGA. So at the point in time that information
Sorry
comes
to butt
into
in. So
P&R,
what?
I'm not sure
What
we'll have
period?
it.
What period does this report refer to then? The one I'm looking at there.
This report is for previous 6 months.
6 months, April to
Yeah, the first. Yeah.
Okay.
So I won't have information for the full year in terms of where we sit, Councillor Mann. I'm assuming you're referring to the stats where we sit in terms of the ranking order across the rest of Wales. I can certainly try to obtain information from my colleagues across the other LAs for the first 6 months of the year. Whether I'll have that, I'm not sure. But in the months after March, I will certainly have a position as to where we sit across Wales. In terms of stress as well, you'll also recall from previous information that we've brought into the committee from the wellbeing strategy that based on the reporting from our staff, stress is the highest reason for absence across the authority, but it is not work-related stress, it is personal stress. And managers will work through those issues with staff as much as they can. But it is important for me to remind members, based on the information that we've had in previous years, it is not work-related stress that is causing staff to be off in terms of our highest reason for absence. But I can certainly bring an update into members as we've discussed.
Thank you, Lynn. Colin, before you ask your second question, can I just bring Councillor Gordon in, because he may want to contribute to this discussion? Councillor Gordon, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, I am in the meeting, listening with interest. For the first 3 years I was in this position, I worked closely with Lynn and her team on sickness issues, because I recognised straight away that the sickness was far too high in the authority, unfortunately, like a lot of authorities. We were making excellent progress, and we have fetched reports on sickness back to this committee on numerous occasions. Then, unfortunately, 2 years ago, we all know what happened, and things went haywire. But as Lynn said, a lot of people have continued working. A lot of people have worked from home. They've had the various training, they've had the equipment. And just before Christmas, I met with staff from HR, procurement, legal, elections, and they were all saying the same thing. That yes, on times, it has been stressful to work from home, because I think most people thought, great, you know, we haven't got to get up early in the morning, we haven't got to go out. But the novelty, as I've said before, I think soon wore off with a lot of people, because a lot of people needed interaction with their peers and talk about anything, going into work on a Monday morning, what the football was on the weekend, what was on the television, and a lot of people need that. And if you recall, because we have fetched the reports, we've done 2 surveys, staff surveys, and in general, what the staff survey is actually saying, that the staff who are actually working from home would prefer a bit of both. Perhaps 3 days at home, 2 days at work, or 2 days at home and 3 days in work. But I will work closely with Lynn, and if we can, we'll fetch another report back to the committee before May on these issues. And like I said, I'm more than happy to fetch the reports. Like I said, we have done in the past, and up until the pre-election period kicks in, hopefully we can get a report in before that. I think we got one more P&R before the pre-election period. I don't know if that is time enough, but perhaps we can fetch in something to you at that meeting.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Gordon. Thanks for that. Back to Councillor Mann, please.
Thanks, Councillor Gordon.
Can I ask a question there? Because is Councillor Gordon moving that? Because I'd like to speak on that very issue if I could. So
go ahead, Councillor Whittle.
Well, thank you, Chair. Well, yeah, I think Councillor Gordon's hit the nail on the head, really. You know, and I think that part of this report should be entitled a return to work strategy, and I think it's a little bit overdue now. It's quite clear that many restrictions are beginning to end in March. In England, perhaps a little faster than Scotland's just announced they're ending their restrictions in March as well. But I think a lot of people, Councillor Gordon mentioned the loneliness. There could very well be, of course, the issue of perhaps too much time at home. People perhaps not used to spending literally 24/7 with their partners as well. And whilst it can be almost a jocular thing, it's perhaps quite serious, because it can get, you know, people can be quite stressful as well, because they're spending perhaps, with respect, too much time with their partners. And I think also people will be worried perhaps in the coming months at their escalating fuel costs, because when people go to work, usually their heating and their lighting is off during these winter months. Many members of our staff have probably had extra heating costs as well, which no one has thought of. And I think the extra heating costs in the coming months will certainly outweigh their travelling costs, especially those who live fairly near to their place of work. And of course, we also have to think of the council taxpayer, who cannot go on funding a very large building, well, many large buildings, but T. Penasta in particular, which, with the greatest respect, is like the Marie Celeste at the moment. But it's all got to be heated and lighting and security. And if it's not going to be used, then perhaps we consider getting rid of it. I don't know. But we have to have a return to work strategy in order to perhaps assist us with this high level of absenteeism, because it cannot carry on, because the public will be faced with council tax rise increases probably. We've got money in reserves, and the public will want answers, and the answers they want will be from us as councillors. So a return to work strategy report is now extremely overdue, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whittle. We need to clarify, it's not a return to work. Obviously, it's a return to the office. You're talking about people who've been working for the last 2 years. And also, it's not just a return to the office, because, of course, our council has adopted an agile working strategy, which will entail people not necessarily returning to the office they worked in 2 years ago. There's a huge array of options for people to work in the future. So the principle is good, but calling it a return to work is a slap in the face for our council.
Well, you know, splitting hairs perhaps a little bit, because if they're on the sick, they're not working anyway, so they are returning to work. I'm trying to get people back into work. Work is good for people.
People are in work. This is the point. If you talk about
not the ones who are on the sick, they're not.
No, but you weren't talking about them. You were talking about people who've been working from home. It's a different thing.
Well, okay, if that's what you feel, is fair enough.
Councillor Mann, please.
Thank you, Chair. Before I go on to my second question, could I just ask whether, I think Lynn mentioned out of work stress. Do we actually categorise that at all? Yeah,
in the wellbeing strategy to which Lynn referred, there are top 10 or whatever it was reasons for sick absence, and the top one was non-work related stress, as I recall. So we'll still have access to that strategy, so you can see the historic or the more recent sick absence categorised. Yes.
That is breaking down into categories as well, is it? That particular?
Yeah, so you got non-work related stress, anxiety, depression. I think mental illness is always top of the list. My guess, Lynn, would be musculoskeletal for the next one. Yeah, we're familiar with this stuff, aren't we? After all.
Yeah, some cynics say stress has taken over from backache, but we better not go there. Chair, my second one was it was related to me recently that there are possibly 1 or 2 departments, most of the staff who are actually working from the office. I just wanted to check whether or not that is correct or not.
Lynn, could you help us with that, please?
I think that would depend on service needs, Chair. There are some staff that have to attend the office for some parts of their roles and their functions. It really does depend on the needs of the service, access to information and on all sorts of things, really. Councillor Mann, if you've got any queries, feel free to give me a ring outside of the meeting. I can certainly get that information for you if it would help, or I can answer you. But there may be some staff that are office-based or attend in the office regularly. Again, that would be with the risk assessment and based on agreement with the head of service.
I can name the department if you wish. I mean,
would you rather, Chair? Would you rather contact Lynn outside of the meeting?
I don't mind. I didn't know whether you wanted the department mentioned in this meeting or not. You know.
That's why I asked if you'd like to contact Lynn outside of the meeting.
Okay, fine.
Thank you. Yeah. Any other member, please, got any other questions or points to raise on the report? Can't see any more hands. Okay, at the recommendation of paragraph 3.1 of the report is that members review the assessment and discuss, challenge and scrutinise the information contained within. It's fair to say there's been challenge and scrutiny of the information contained in this report. It's duly noted. Thank you, everyone. We move on to item 8 on our agenda, which is Strategic Equality Plan Annual Report 2020-21. Deputy Leader, Councillor Jamie Pritchard. Oh, it's Leonard again. Oh, sorry, I had Councillor Jamie Pritchard down. Councillor Stenner, please.
Thank you, Chair. The Strategic Equality Plan 2020 to 2024 has been developed to primarily demonstrate the Council's commitment to meeting the Equality Act 2010 Statutory Duty Wales Regulations 2011. It highlights links to legislation and regulations covering the Welsh language standards and human rights issues, and how it supports 4 of the 7 aims of Welsh Government's Wellbeing of Future Generations Wales Act 2015. A healthier Wales, a more equal Wales, a Wales of cohesive communities, and a Wales of vibrant culture and thriving Welsh language. It also outlines how the Council will meet its responsibilities under the public sector equality duty to advance equality and inclusion for all protected groups. Under the Equality Act 2010, the Council has a statutory duty to produce an annual report on the steps it has taken to meet the public sector's equality duty and its own equality objectives as set out in the Strategic Equality Plan 2020 to 24. The requirements are very detailed as to what relevant information must be included in the annual report. The full report is included as Appendix A. The annual report is also required in order to ensure that the Equality and Human Rights Commission, as a regulatory body involved, are provided with full evidence of the Council's compliance and commitment to those statutory duties. The annual report must be published by the 31st of March the following year. The report highlights the Council's response to the COVID-19 pandemic and how we helped our vulnerable residents via the Buddy Scheme and delivery of key services such as social services, housing, childcare hubs, free school meal deliveries, early years provision, distance learning, the youth service, and efforts made to protect the local economy. As you know, we developed, approved and published our new Strategic Equality Plan 2020-24 and a new integrated impact assessment toolkit in light of the new requirement to consider the socio-economic duty in strategic decisions, which came into effect from the 1st of April 2021. The report gives an overview of consultation and engagement exercises we undertook in 2020-21, which was a challenging year due to the pandemic and required us to find other methods of communicating messages and engaging with people. Key consultations include the Caerphilly Conversation, 21st Century Schools Programme, Active Travel, Stage 1 Consultation, Agile Working Staff Survey. We also celebrated and marked some significant annual calendar dates and used them as opportunities to raise awareness, educate, celebrate and remember, such as Mental Health Awareness Week, Armed Forces Day, Pride Cymru, Diwrnod Shwmai, Black History Month, White Ribbon Day, Holocaust Memorial Day, International Women's Day, and Zero Tolerance to Racism. Collating information to be included in the annual report was difficult, and a lot of its content is based on content of council reports that we were aware of that had been discussed and approved via cabinet or press releases and social media posts published. Discussions are ongoing with the business improvement team to include equalities and Welsh language actions as a section in each DPA, ensuring that all performance-related work is captured and evidenced in one place. The report will be going to Cabinet on the 9th of March for approval before being published. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stenner. An excellent introduction, thank you. And now we have Anwen Cullinan to present the report, please. Hi.
Good evening. I don't know if anybody's got any questions based on what Councillor Stenner presented in her briefing note, but I'm happy to answer any questions or highlight any detail in the report itself.
Thank you, Anwen. Yes, I think some members have questions, so thank you for that. Let's go over to members, please. Please show if you'd like to ask any questions or make any observations. Councillor Miles, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can I congratulate you on a really comprehensive and detailed report? It was, nice to read it, really.
Yes.
So I'm going to ask you a question on just one specific part of the report, which I'm quite interested in, which is to do with the gender pay gap. And I read in the report that the council doesn't pay males and females differently for work of equal value, which is nice to read. But yet there is a gender pay gap, and you're attributing that to societal issues, noting that the vast majority of posts in the lower quartile of data are part-time posts. So my question really is, do you think this organisation is providing opportunities for part-time working throughout the organisation so that women who might be more inclined, I agree with that, more inclined to work part-time, are finding there are opportunities at a higher level? Or are the only opportunities we're providing in jobs at a lower quartile level?
Yeah, as stated in the report, predominantly they tend to be societal issues, whereas women tend to go into catering or cleaning, or they might have caring responsibilities at home, which then dictate that they can only take on part-time, and those roles tend to be in the lower quartile. I don't know if Lynn would like to come in on this, because the gender pay gap is something that HR report on.
Lynn, would you like to come in on this, please?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Anwen. Yeah, Councillor Miles Anwen has picked up on the facts, really. We do have lots of female staff who choose part-time roles to fit around caring responsibilities, family responsibilities. Lots of those staff have more than one post with us, though, and they choose to do that. It's a really positive for the council in terms of the opportunities we offer to our staff to work flexible hours, not just all full-time posts. So it's a really positive in terms of the council, and we continually promote the opportunities for different hours of work, different shifts. The important thing about the gender pay gap that Anwen mentioned is that we don't pay different rates of pay for people doing similar types of work. We've got a robust pay and grading structure that takes account of many factors in terms of evaluation. So we're not paying males and females differently for their work. So that's a really important factor of the gender pay gap, and that's important that we recognise that. We will be publishing our gender pay gap statement by the end of March, as is a legal requirement of us. That will be circulated to members. It will be on our website, and as a result of what we publish within our statement, we will continue to look into the issues that it raises. We will continue to look to see if there's anything we can do about hours of work, about contract hours, to try and reduce that gender pay gap. But it isn't all a negative issue for the council. It's a positive in terms of the many different opportunities that we can provide to staff to support them to work and to accommodate any commitments they have in their personal lives.
Absolutely spot on, Lynn. I'll come just a minute, please, Brenda. It didn't actually answer Brenda's question, sorry, Councillor Miles's question, which was, what are we doing as an employer to promote part-time opportunities for higher paid roles? Well, that was your question, really, was it? Yes.
It is, because if you're inclined to work part-time as a woman and the only jobs available to you are the ones you've described, that, you know, sort of like part-time supervisors, cleaners, catering staff, and they're all kind of at low pay grade, where are the opportunities for women who want to work part-time but aspire to earn, sorry, my phone's going on, but aspire to a higher level, you know, kind of role in the organisation? Are those opportunities there? I suspect they're not, you see, so that's where my question comes from.
Sorry, Councillor Miles, I'd missed the beginning of what you'd said. We do offer, all of our posts are offered on variable contracts. So whilst they might be advertised where somebody's looking for a full-time post, we would always look at people who would like to work on reduced hours or part-time hours. So that is always an opportunity. We've got many staffing posts as well on different working patterns. So some staff may have compressed hours, so may work 37 hours over 4 days, may work a 9-day fortnight. And we do have people in senior positions in part-time posts. It's always an option, but it's always about the needs of the service. So we would never not consider somebody for a post just because they were looking not to work full-time.
Thank you, Lynn. Councillor Miles?
Okay, yeah, I mean, thanks for the answer. But you know, it kind of still bugs me that the opportunities for part-time working are low-paid opportunities. A lot of the posts, but thanks for the explanation. And I know it's not an easy nut to crack, because everyone would be doing it, wouldn't they, if it was simple? Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. Lynn, did you want to come back in?
Yeah, just to add, we do have flexible working policies that do allow all of our staff to request different hours of work and different patterns of work. And what we've been able to find as well is during the pandemic, for those staff who were previously office-based, their hours of duty have been able to change. So they're not necessarily predominantly Monday to Friday for all services, again on service needs. So that's been able to help staff as well work different working patterns, work different hours.
Thank you, Lynn. That was helpful too. Any other member, please, have any other question or query on the report? No. The recommendation at paragraph 3.1 is for this committee to provide any comments on the report prior to cabinet approval. Well, thank you for your comments, Councillor Miles, and thank you very much, Anwen, for contributing. Thank you. On to item 9 of our agenda now, which is Whole Authority Revenue Budget Monitoring Report, brackets month 9. And this is introduced by Councillor Stenner.
Thank you, Chair. Before us this evening is the Whole Authority Revenue Budget Monitoring Report. This report provides details of projected revenue budget outturn position based on information available at month 9 of the current financial year. The report also includes proposals for the ring fencing of underspends for a range of specific purposes. Scrutiny is asked to consider these prior to the proposals being presented to Cabinet on the 23rd of February. The recommendations are shown at 3.1.1 and 3.1.2 of the report. I would also like to inform members that within the last week, Welsh Government has announced further funding of £50 million for the local government financial settlement across Wales for the current financial year, that is 2021-22. The additional one-off funding is intended to displace expenditure met through councils' own resources during the year to enable more flexibility in managing pressures moving forward. The additional funding is unhypotheticated and can be carried forward in reserves. The funding will not formally will be formally approved by the Senate until March, but it is anticipated that Caerphilly County Borough Council will receive circa £2.9 million. The additional sum will increase the projected underspends as detailed in the whole authority revenue budget report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stenner. Before I call in Councillor Johnson, does Steve Harris want to add anything before we ask members to speak? Hi, Steve.
Hi, Chair. I've got nothing specifically to add. I thought it was important that members realise that the additional funding has been announced within the last week, because that brings us right up to date. And obviously happy to assist with any questions.
Thank you very much. Over to Councillor Johnston, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't know, Chair, is there any from education here that can answer my questions?
I don't think, Chair, if I can come in, we've got anybody specifically, but happy to take the question. Councillor Johnson, if we're not able to answer that today, we'll obviously get back to you outside the meeting. You're on mute, Councillor Johnson.
You're muted, Councillor Johnson.
Oh, sorry, Chair, my fingers are slipping around here. My first question is on the underspend, and I can see on 153 what the proposals are for the underspend, so that they use it, which, to be honest, I am very disappointed in that there, because we know for the past 2 years, for the past 2 years now, our kids in our schools have been jumping from blended learning back into school, or there's a class off with COVID. So a lot of them have lost a lot of education. And to see the money being spent on 21st century schools and all, instead of being spent on hiring more staff to go and try and help these kids catch up on their education, is to me a wrong way of using this underspend. So can anyone maybe explain to me why the underspend is not being used to help recruit more staff into this form, to use that their way, because, a child is one opportunity at education, and for the past 2 years they haven't had that, and they are going down. And we're seeing reports where the comprehensives schools are trying to work with primary, just trying to work with the comprehensives to see what we can teach the kids, what they really need going in there. But they're so far behind, some of them, it might be too late. And unless we're going to use as many interventions as possible to try and get them caught up, these kids are going to be a lost generation. So can you maybe give me a bit? I got another question as well, Chair.
Let's take them one at a time. Thank you for that, yeah. Councillor Johnson. Steve, any help with this, please?
Yeah, I don't think I can give you a detailed response to that, but I think certainly from a finance perspective, I just like to point out that in this report, we are talking about investing in a number of fixed term posts within education, which will hopefully help address some of those concerns, Councillor Johnson. And I think it's fair to say the budget report that's being presented to Council on Thursday, the education budget is protected. In fact, in some areas, we are looking at putting in some additional resources. So I think certainly from a finance perspective, I can give a positive response to that. But if you have particular concerns, Councillor Johnson, in terms of the impact on educational attainment, maybe it's probably better if you contact Kerry Cole directly outside the meeting.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. And I can see within the budget, we are putting more funding in, but this is an underspend that, a lot of it's to do with the transport back and forth to school. Of course, when the schools weren't open, so we weren't using the transport. But that is money that, will only be there once. When you spend it, it's gone. But we need to use, from my point of view, we need to use it on that there. If I could go to my other question, now it's on page 153.
Yeah.
And this is, and can I just say, Chair, let me move this here so I can find. Yeah, can I just say, Chair, it's very disappointing when you're seeing education and all being brought up and there's no officers here to answer our questions. You know, they should be attending these meetings as well.
It's not fair, I think, to criticise officers who aren't here. If there are officers from education who aren't here, it's because our agenda tonight is not. We're not on the education scrutiny committee. These are financial reports primarily, besides the equality one, and therefore education officers may not have anticipated any questions arising. I think Steve has answered most of your criticisms on the financial aspect, so that resources are being invested. The underspend is being invested partly in education.
I would disagree with you, Chair, on that there, but I will.
And he's recommended you to contact Kerry Cole if you've got any specific education questions. But
right,
please
so the
point to
second one is 7.2 on page 153. And it is just looking for someone to explain education other than at school. Can they explain what funding is going into that and why? And what is it? What education are we talking about? But of course, Steve's not probably going to be able to answer that.
But he knows it where every penny's spent, so he probably can answer that.
Okay, I'll two things. First of all, can I go back to the initial point, Councillor Johnson? When we know the final outturn position for the current financial year, as we do every year, a further report will be presented to Cabinet reporting what the final underspend position is, and also there'll be a further opportunity at that point to bring forward any suggestions for utilising that underspend. So I think, you know, a dialogue between yourself and Kerry Cole between now and when that report is presented would be useful. In terms of the education other than at school, I see Sue's put her hand up, but I'll have a go first, Sue, if you don't mind. I'm sure you'll do better than me. But we do have a strategy that's been agreed. We're working up a new operating model for delivering services to these vulnerable learners. And we have put quite significant additional resources into this area. If you look back at budget reports over previous years, I remember one year, for example, we put an additional 800k into this budget. So this is a evolving strategy. You'll see that one of the fixed term posts that we're recommending is to help us finish that piece of work. But Sue, you may want to come in and add a little bit more detail on that.
Just to add, Steve is right. Kerry Cole would be the best on the education attainment side, Councillor Johnson. I can just confirm that education other than at school strategies, the strategy that was presented to our education scrutiny another number of months ago now. These are children that, for whatever reason, mainstream provision, short or long term, isn't the right provision for these learners. So we've got a strategy that looks at each individual learner and looks at what is best education provision for them. That could be coming out of mainstream for a short time, a medium time, or even a longer term for some learners. One of the 21st Century Schools proposal is the development of a centre for vulnerable learners in Pontefraith. That's part of this AOTA strategy. Glanninand Learning Centre is also being expanded, again part of this AOTA strategy. And the third development is Virginia Park in Caerphilly, again part of the AOTA, the education other than at school strategy. So lots of alignment of provision for the most vulnerable within our school. Now, it doesn't mean these children are coming out of mainstream provision and staying out. We see it very much as a revolving door, that they need the support for a short period of time with an aim to getting them back into mainstream provision. But obviously that's my mindset with 1 foot into 21st Century Schools. But Kerry, I'm sure if you contact her on the attainment side and the strategies that are in place to manage the impact of education provision post-COVID, I'm sure she can clarify and give you a bit more information on the AOTAs as well.
Can I just ask you though, Sue? Because I'm concerned that I am hearing of more and more children being kept at home. Okay. Parents are pulling them out of school. Anxiety, things like this here. Now, what I was kind of, looking at, if we are putting more and more money into it, what type of financial aid does these parents get, or do we provide any financial aid for them to homeschool? Because I'm hearing that, and I've had conversations with the head teacher in Newbridge, email exchanges to do with one family you know, and I'm getting a bit concerned on, is this a financial issue or what? Is there financial incentives for families to keep the kids off?
No, obviously we're talking about there could be several reasons. It could be that for whatever reason a parent is not sending children to school. There's an education welfare concern there, so our education welfare team.
No, this is where they've decided to pull the kids out of school.
Okay, to home education.
Yes.
Home educate. In home education, we've actually got officers that has got a clear role set by Welsh Government to monitor their home education, to make sure that it's of a quality standard. But that is within a parent's right to home educate their children. But our role as a local education authority is making sure there is adequate provision. So we've got a sort of, I say a policing role, but we've got a support role for those families.
Right.
And I'm sure Kerry could give you information on the numbers home educated within the authority, if that's what you would like.
Oh, well, I'm concerned for my ward, like it, you know, to hear so many ones doing it, and it's not just maybe one, it's one with 2 or 3 kids, you know, being kept at home, and you know,
and there are,
concerns me if they're not getting the proper education, because it's the futures.
I can reassure you, Councillor Johnson, that we've got a role on making sure that provision is robust and adequate, but there are a lot of organisation companies now that are setting up, you know, to support parents as well. So yeah, Kerry will certainly give you information on numbers in your ward.
Okay, thanks, Sue.
Thank you very much, Sue. Thank you, Councillor Johnston. Councillor Mann, please.
Thank you, Chair. Could I go back to a point that was made by Gary Johnson earlier? I mean, it has been raised before. When we have this sort of report, which is covering a whole range of areas, there have been requests for relevant officers to be in the meeting, and I would have thought that it's easier when we're meeting online. I mean, if somebody physically had to be there all night in the council offices, well, obviously it's a different issue, but it must be easier to arrange this way, because really, to make the meeting more meaningful, it's better to have the answers in the meeting, isn't it? So that is the point I wanted to make. On the education one, I want to come on the social services afterward. On the education one, I thought we were talking about all children, not just the ones we class as vulnerable children, because in the pandemic, all our children were vulnerable because of the amount of schooling that they lost, and there were certainly fine ambitions to provide specialist teaching in the hope that children would be able to catch up with what they'd lost. Now, I understand there is a shortage of teachers, ironically, but that was what I wanted to hear a comment on, the, you know, what have been able to do to not catch up with all the children, not just the ones that, you know, we categorise, if you like.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. Sue, please.
Whereas I want the detail to answer Councillor Mann, but I will say that there's significant investment gone into schools by Welsh Government grant funding on a wide range of catch-up areas, Councillor Mann. I know Jane Southcombe, our Finance Manager, will present a report to Education Scrutiny on school balances. School balances have increased significantly over the last 2 years for obvious reasons. Obviously, building projects has gone on hold. There's been recruitment issues in school, but there has been significant targeted investment on catch-up programmes across our primary and secondary sector.
But have the balances gone up because the relevant teachers aren't available?
That's probably one of the reasons, Councillor Mann. Yes, because, you know, recruitment, as Lynn said previously, isn't just an issue corporately, it's an issue in education as well.
Okay, thank you, Sue. Can I come on to the other one, Chair, please?
Yes, please.
I'm on page 148. Well, it's mentioned a couple of places. The underspend in social services of something like £6.5 million. I'm sure a lot of that relates. I know some of it is a late grant from Welsh Government, but I'm sure a lot of it relates to the fact that day centres haven't been opened. And I think we all know that there are a lot of carers who are not exactly happy about that. I won't say any more, but can we not use some of that money, some of the underspend, to actually get more if we are having to do, out of day centre provision, because there are huge numbers of vulnerable people who are just not receiving anything like the service they had before. And rather than sitting on this money, which should be there for helping these people, we should be actually using that money to actually do so.
Okay, it's a good point. Steve might want to come in on that, please.
Yeah, just to emphasise, I mean, the main reason for the underspend in social care, it is because of all the grant funding we're having. I mean, it says in the report that just within the last few weeks, we've received another 2.9 million, which was announced very late in the day by Welsh Government. In relation to daycare, yes, obviously we're not providing a full service in that area at the moment. I know this is high on Dave Street's agenda about how we can return services in the future and what those services will look like. But just to reassure you as well, underspends within social care, 50% of the underspend will find its way into reserves that social care can use moving forward. And that's in line with the strategy on the use of reserves that has previously been agreed by Cabinet. So, half of that underspend will be held back for spend on social care in the future. And, if there's any proposals brought forward, moving forward in terms of how we deliver daycare in the future, for example, that needs one-off funding to make that happen, then that would be a legitimate use of that funding. So just want to make those points. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. I'm not suggesting officers aren't working hard on this. I'm sure they are, but obviously what is being put into myself and I'm sure other councillors is the fact that the people are missing out on these services now, not sometime in the future, and it's whether we can use some of this money to actually provide extra service for those people, whether it's in or out of day centres.
Yeah, okay, except that, and the other thing, of course, at the moment that we are experiencing is that, there is some limitations in the market at the moment. There's capacity issues in terms of some of the providers being able to provide packages of care. So there are many challenges, which social services are trying to deal with at the present time.
Thank you, Steve. Anything else, Councillor
Mann? No, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other member, please, have any other comments or questions on the report? No. Okay. At paragraph 3.1.1 and 3.1.2 of the report, it's recommended that our committee notes the content of the report and that we endorse the proposed ring fencing of underspends totalling £2.535 million as detailed in the report's Appendix 2. Can someone please move and second the recommendations?
I move, Chair. Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Councillor Adams.
I second, Councillor Aldworth.
Thank you, Councillor Aldworth. We should now go to the vote then. And again, if you're not able to vote on forms, please let us know so you can have your say.
That's been carried, Chair. 6 votes for and 1 abstention.
Thank you, Mark. We go to our final item on our agenda, item 10, update on reserves. And this is introduced by Cabinet Member Elaine Stenner, please.
Thank you, Chair. This report is an update on the usable reserves held by the authority. Details are provided of the audited balances as of the 1st of April 2021, along with updated balances reflecting in-year adjustments action to date for the 2020-21 financial year. The recommendation is shown at 3.1 and members are asked to note the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stenner. Steve, would you like to say anything before we move on?
Thank you, Chair. Just very briefly, members will be aware that this is an annual report that we do bring into the Policy and Resources Scrutiny Committee. and the purpose of which is to obviously provide details of the reserves that are held on the balance sheet currently and their intended purpose. And I'm happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you very much. Members, do you have any questions or points to raise on this report, please? Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Chair. Number one, as I mentioned earlier, I was rather surprised that we were just asked to note this report. We weren't even asked to discuss it when the sort of money involved is in front of us. I don't know whether Steve and or the cabinet member wishes to answer this, but how on earth can we justify sitting on 180 million, almost 180 million pounds, which in fact has substantially risen in the last 3 years? I just don't see how it can be justified.
Okay, Councillor Senna, would you like to go, please?
Yeah, if I can come in, because this comes up annually. That, you know, all reserves are held for a purpose. If you use your reserves, as you know yourself, Councillor Mann, they're a one-off spend. Once they're gone, they're gone. If there's anything that the last weekend with all of the storms has shown us, is that we need reserves there to look after our residents. Now, our reserves can be held, can be used in numerous ways, as you well know, such as, you know, capital projects. They're there for social care, funding for schools for our children within the borough. So, you know, it's not a matter of sitting on reserves. We will use the reserves, such as for the place shaping scheme that we have in place going forward. But it certainly is not, you know, spending them, you know, just for the sake of it. They need, you know, it can't be just a one-off spend then. I don't know whether Steve want to.
Yeah, I'm quite happy to come in and make some further comments. I mean, if you just look at the 7 highest value reserves that we've shared the details with today, the general fund is £11 million. The HRA is 14.9 million. Now that will be used moving forward to support the post asset management strategy and the new build programme. So it's there for a reason. The capital reserves total £70.6 million. 32 million of that, sorry, 30.2 million of that is set aside to support the place shaping programme moving forward. And obviously, in time, a firm proposal will be brought forward for member consideration. You may recall as well that I've said that we're going to look at the way that we monitor our capital budgets and give you a 3-year timeline. So hopefully we'll be able to provide some reassurances about how those balances will be used over a 3-year period moving forward. We've got 5.7 million in reserve for our insurance liabilities. We do self-insure up to £250,000. That reserve is independently verified by our brokers, and they will look at that to ensure that it's required to settle potential claims moving forward. We have £11 million funding in respect of PFI obligations moving forward, most of which is Welsh Government funding that's been given us in advance of need. We have schools balances of 11.3 million, and we've already discussed the evening the fact that they're higher because of the pandemic, but obviously schools will need to produce plans of how they're going to utilise that funding moving forward. And also within the figure, there is a 8.1 million figure in terms of the loan that was taken out for Nestar. Now with that one, that's not a cashback reserve, it's purely an accounting adjustment that we need to do to unwind notional interest that's due on that loan moving forward. That purely is just a disclosure requirement. It's not cash that is available to the authority. So as I said, even if you just look at those ones I just ran through with you, that represents around 74% of the balances that we're actually holding. The purpose of the report is to give members the chance to ask questions about the various reserves and what they're there for. So whilst I accept the recommendation says for noting, there is an opportunity here to ask questions. And outside of the meeting, if questions have any particular points they want clarified or concerns that they want to raise, I'm more than happy to have conversations or an exchange of emails with those members. And can I also stress, you know, I've said on numerous occasions, we do make these balances work for us. These reserves are there for specific reasons, but the cash that's put aside in terms of these reserves might not be required immediately. But we do place our cash in investments, as you know, and we're doing everything we can to improve our returns on investments. And we also undertake the policy of internal borrowing, where we use these cash balances instead of borrowing at the present time, because it's more financially prudent to do that in the current circumstances. So I hope that that helps give a bit more context. But again, if there's any detailed questions, I'm happy to try and answer them this evening.
Thank you, Steve. Councillor Mann, do you want to go back?
Yeah, I appreciate what's been said, Chair, but I'm sorry, I'm wondering what makes this council pretty well unique in Wales, that we need far more balances than most other well, with the exception of one, as far as I know, councils in Wales. You know, we all, every council, to my knowledge, faces the same sort of issues, and you know, how can other authorities manage with vastly less? I appreciate what you said about investing, Steve, and I note the extra money we brought in the report, but I just do not see the justification in sitting on the sort of money that we've got. I'm sorry, I don't.
Can I just make one further comment in response? Let's not lose sight of the fact we are the 5th highest spending local authority in Wales. And also we need to be careful that we don't compare apples with pears. Not all authorities have housing stock, so they may not hold reserves for that. Not all authorities have PFI schemes. And I quoted earlier that, you know, there's significant amounts set aside to support that as well. So just want to make that point. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, I also appreciate that, Steve. And, you know, I mentioned earlier the fact that the reserves have gone up by a huge amount in the last 3 years, you know. Well, that is a fact, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's being replicated across Wales, because obviously the pandemic has had a significant impact. If you cast your minds back to the outturn report last year, there was a significant underspend, much of which has been set aside in various reserves. So my expectation is that once those reserves are actually utilised, we will start to see the level of reserves reducing as we move forward.
Thank you. Councillor Miles, please.
Sorry, thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thanks. I got 2 questions. One I've only just recently spotted, but I'll bring it up. It's on page 166, and it comes under the Education and Lifelong Learning list of reserves. And I noticed about a third of the way down the list on that page, it says there's 49,000 put away for post-16 stroke single-sex review. And then about 2/3 of the way down the list, there's another item for 42,000 that's put aside for a post-16 review. So I'm wondering if those are actually the same item, or if they're not. Indeed, why are there 2 reviews of post-16?
Okay.
Yeah, I can answer that. I think that it is the same item. It's just that those particular sums were agreed at different points in time. But it is relating to one piece of work that's being done on the post-16 review.
Thank you, Steve.
But the 2 budgets are correct, and they should be like added together.
In fact, Councillor Miles, when I went through it, writing the report, I asked myself the same question and satisfied myself that it is the same thing.
Yeah. Okay. So my other question really was, I noticed we've got a reserve strategy, and it seems to me that we're sticking to the strategy, but yet people do raise queries about the reserves that we've got. And I noticed the strategy was put in place in July 2016. So I wondered, how long is that strategy supposed to last for, or indeed has it been reviewed in recent years, or is it time it was reviewed?
Yeah, that's a good. Sorry, Chair. Good point, Councillor Miles. It hasn't been reviewed since that time. It's clearly good practice to have a strategy in place to establish a framework for setting up reserves, etc. There's quite a lot of work going on at the moment linked to the transformation programme around updating things like our financial regulations, etc. So I'll take your comment on board, and maybe it is now timely as well to have a look at the reserve strategy and bring that into Policy and Resources Scrutiny Committee for review in due course.
Thank you, Steve. And thank you, Councillor Miles.
Thanks.
Councillor Johnston, please.
Thank you, Chair, and it's been good listening to this debate already. my few points on, firstly, I will point out I'm not against holding reserves. You know, it's always good to have a bit left aside for a rainy day, especially when you see what's been happening out here over the last few days, with the storms. But there's holding a bit back for a rainy day, and then there's holding the amount of money that we have. And, the one thing when I look around our authority and I look at our council compared to other councils, we are one of the most deprived councils in Wales. We're not the bottom, thankfully, but we're not far off it. And what we need, Chair, is well-paid jobs. And whereas these are capital payments, one-off spends, but I believe we should be spending some of this to try to entice good, well-paid jobs to our borough. No, not just waiting on the city deal. We should be doing it alongside the city deal, using our reserves to try to get people into well-paid jobs, because it helps the authority as well. It brings in revenue from the businesses, but it also gives our residents a better standard of living. And well, yeah, we have a few, but I can't think of many. Most people to earn a good salary have to move outside or travel outside our borough to get a good, well-paid job. So can we maybe, if, as Steve is saying, maybe when they go to review our reserves, how we spend them, and can we put some money towards enticing, not just some, quite a bit, to entice companies to come to, or even if it means, brownfield sites, we make it good for them or whatever it has to take to get these employers here. Because the only thing I've seen from the city deal, we've seen down in Newport, the big site down there, they're getting the well-paid jobs. But if all people want them, they have to travel outside our borough. We need to start enticing people here to our borough. So we do, so we can raise the standards.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. I think Steve may want to refer to his earlier reference to investment in the place shaping agenda, but I'm sure Steve has got some thoughts on that.
Yeah, but the place shaping's not really going, into business as much. Bringing these, it is going in a bit. We're looking at a hotel and things like that, but that's not, hotel work is not good, well-paid jobs, Chair. When I say good manufacturing, that's where the money is.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. The other point I wanted to make is that members will be aware that in recent years we've put £3.5 million into the Regeneration Board. There's a whole range of schemes which that money is being used for. It's looking at bringing investment into the county borough and creating jobs, and hopefully in time we'll see some of those schemes come to fruition and some of the positive benefits in terms of employment. And we do use reserves on numerous occasions as well to match fund projects, to bring funding in from WG, etc. So it's a point well made, Councillor Johnson, but I just wanted to reassure you that a lot of work is happening within the regeneration and planning area to try and lever in funding and to have shelf-ready projects through the Regeneration Board to take some initiatives forward in due course. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Can I just come back on that, Chair?
Yes, do.
So, Steve, that is good to hear, but could we, to get the big companies, the amount of money you're talking about, is that going to be anywhere near enough, to get a big site coming here, that could employ, hundreds, thousands, to get them up, to our borough, we may have to, speculate a bit more than, a few million, we might have to throw a bit at it, but at the end of the day, if they come and stay, the benefits that brings to not just the council, but to the whole area, and it helps then, as it will help them uplift all the other pay around that there, because when all the staff are going there, people have to pay to get that there as well.
Yeah,
but thanks. It is good to hear that we are doing something, but I would, hope we need that big one.
Yeah, and as I said earlier, Councillor Johnson, there will be a further opportunity in July to bring some of these suggestions forward. And if members are minded to put more money into the Regeneration Board to address the issues you're raising, then clearly that's something that can be considered at that time.
If I'm still here in July, Steve, I will bring it up.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Johnston. Is there anything else?
No.
Just a quick point, Chair, if I may.
Councillor Mann.
Most members are blissfully unaware of what goes on in the Regeneration Board because the members are sworn to secrecy.
Steve?
Sorry, Chair, can I just make a comment? There is cross-party representation on that group. That's just a comment I'd like to make.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but the members are allegedly sworn to secrecy.
Sorry, Chair, just one further point. Any recommendations from the Regeneration Board do find their way into a report to Cabinet in a formal meeting, and that is in the public domain.
Thank you, Steve. Councillor Mann, is there anything else?
No, sorry, Chair, I'd forgotten to get my hand up.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Miles, please.
I just wanted to say I am a member of the Regeneration Board and I haven't been sworn to secrecy, although there are some reports that come forward which are confidential for particular reasons.
Thank you for the clarification, Councillor Miles. Are there any other questions or comments from members, please, on this report? No. Okay. At paragraph 3.1 of the report, our committee is asked to note its content, as Councillor Mann pointed out earlier. It's duly noted. Thank you, Steve. And that concludes our agenda today. Thank you very much, members and officers, for participating. Can we just confirm that recording of the meeting is stopped, please?